Welcome to Reshape Your Life. I'm Jason Atkinson, certified health coach, nutritionist, and personal trainer. And today I'm going to go over a list of 10 fake health foods that are keeping you fat. Now, before we get into the video, go ahead and subscribe, like us on any social media platform or wherever you're seeing this video. Sign up by email subscription at reshapehealthandfitness.com. Get regular ongoing content that's going to educate, encourage, and inspire you to be your absolute best. So, number one item on the list here, oatmeal. Okay, why did I go straight for oatmeal? Seems like a pretty healthy food, right? That's the exact reason. Oatmeal has been promoted as being a health food, but in actuality, it has very little nutritional content. There is very low protein, almost non-existent, so it doesn't have any essential amino acids that we need. There's not any essential fatty acids to speak of. Its fiber content, which is the one supposed health benefit that it has, is also actually very low, and supplementing with a good psyllium husk fiber, for example, would give you much higher fiber content with fewer energy macros or calories. So another reason that I targeted oatmeal is it's something that people tend to eat for breakfast first thing in the morning, and essentially it's just a source of cheap calories that convert to glucose or sugar. It's mostly just a source of carbohydrates. Being that, like I mentioned, it's a very low protein food, it's not going to do much for you in the way of satiety or fullness. And thanks to something known as the Randle cycle, carbohydrates are to be avoided in a fat loss or weight loss scenario, because when you consume carbohydrates, it increases your insulin. Insulin keeps fat locked in the cells. So if we're trying to burn body fat, consuming carbohydrates is going to be counterproductive. As I mentioned, it's something that people tend to do in the morning for breakfast. So that sets up the cycle for the day of insulin spikes, blood sugar crashes, the low energy and mood, poor mood and poor appetite control that comes along with that rebound hypoglycemia is another reason that I'm really targeting oatmeal on my top 10 here, my bad guy list. Next one on the list is everybody's favorite, peanut butter. Why is peanut butter a fake health food? Well, they proudly proclaim on the front of the logo here that it has 7 grams of protein per serving. Wow, that's amazing, but that doesn't really make this a good source of protein for a number of reasons, because if you do a little quick math, you'll see that there's also 16 grams of fat and 6 grams of net carbohydrates. So it's almost 3 times as much energy as the amount of protein that it contains. In order to get an adequate amount of protein, you should not have to consume 3 times the amount of energy to obtain that protein. That's what the protein to energy ratio is all about. You could get 7 grams of protein with virtually no energy calories, a lot of different sources, a lot of different ways you could do that. So we know it's essentially just a treat or a goodie. Another reason that I know that that's the case is because the ingredients here, peanuts, first of all, peanut is not really a nut. It's a legume, similar to a bean or a pea. And it's only called peanut because it kind of looks like a nut or tastes like a nut. When we take that nut and we roast it and then we grind it and make a paste out of it, as we've done in peanut butter here, it makes it easier to consume more of it. It increases the hyperpalatability of it. Also, we've added sugar and oil in the form of cottonseed oil. So we've got about 75% of the ingredients we're trying to avoid or limit in a single product. The reason why I mentioned or leading with the protein content, peanut butter was originally developed as a protein supplement for hospital patients who were not able to meet their nutritional requirements through whole foods. So the idea was to turn these peas or peanuts into a paste that would be easier for people to eat. But the problem with that is the commercialized product here, like I said, it's got added sugar and oil, so it's high in fat and carbohydrate, and it's fairly low in protein. It's delicious and it's easy to overeat. Also, most peanut butter is sold in not a single serving container, but a large container like this. Personally, I have a hard time moderating a product like this, consuming just a small amount of it, because it is what I consider a trigger food for me, and I know that might be the case for a lot of other people. So I would say put that one on the back burner. It's not really going to do you any favors. You could fit it into an overall program, but I would suggest proceeding with caution. Also, that cottonseed oil is one of the inflammatory vegetable oils, or so-called vegetable oils. They're actually industrial seed oils. That's something else that we want to avoid, because number one, it creates a very poor quality cell when it's incorporated into the cell membrane. That cell is incapable of producing maximum energy on a cellular level. So not only that, it increases systemic inflammation, and there are just a host of problems that potentially could go along with that. So be warned. Peanut butter, not a health food. Okay, next up, whole grain or low fat anything. Okay, rather than picking just a single item to add to the list here, I went with a category of foods, and this category is problematic for a number of reasons. Whole grains, so my saying is grains are garbage and whole grains are whole garbage. But the food manufacturing industry is able to label these products as containing X amount of whole grains, or so many servings of whole grains, as if whole grain were a nutritional requirement, which it is not. Any vitamin content that's found in these whole grains is has been added, because basically the government mandated that these products had to be fortified with vitamins and minerals because they have zero nutritional content. They actually leach minerals from our body and block the absorption of nutrients that we do need. So anti-nutrients are contained in a lot of whole grains. The reason for that is a grain is essentially a type of seed, a grass seed, and that anti-nutrient coating is there to keep predators from consuming it in the wild, or to protect its seed so that it can germinate. And for that reason, there are plant defense chemicals. So plants don't have horns or hooves. They're not able to fight and defend themselves the way, or claws, the way the animals do. So this is their defense mechanism in the wild. Now, when I say whole grain, low fat anything, the whole low fat idea went hand in hand with whole grains. If we're not going to eat fat, what should we eat? Our dietary guidelines for Americans, which we now know was created for financial reasons, not for health reasons, we're quick to recommend 6 to 11 servings of bread, rice, and pasta per day, and that would help you to meet your supposed grain requirement or whole grain requirement. There's no requirement for grains. If you were going to do a basic elimination protocol and you only wanted to eliminate one thing, grains would be a great category of foods to begin with, because grains form the foundation of our food supply in this country, because they're cheap, because they're very profitable, they have a long shelf life, they last forever on a grocery store shelf and make maximum profit for the food manufacturing companies, and they can have sugar and salt and different flavorings and colorings added and turned into thousands of food-like products that have addictive properties. So low fat doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy per se. I'm not an advocate of a very high fat content. I think the diet should be structured with a higher amount of consisting of protein. I hesitate to say calories from protein, but what I mean is build your diet around your protein requirement, which for most people is something like a gram of protein per pound of body weight per day, roughly, or a pound of lean body mass per day at a minimum. And those have been replaced in the diet with fat and carbohydrate. We're over-consuming these foods in an attempt to get enough protein, and that's really what's driving the obesity epidemic. So whole grains and low fat, while low fat is lower in calories, it's lower in dietary energy, it's not always a recipe for healthy, and that health halo effect is something that has caused a lot of people to consume foods that maybe they wouldn't otherwise, simply thinking, well, it's low fat, it's got the stamp of approval on it, it must be healthy. So put that in the category with other things like buzzwords like the industry loves, plant-based or gluten-free, or you name it, whatever is the popular trend at the moment. Food manufacturers are going to monopolize on that. They're going to capitalize on that and catch a wider user base by advertising their product as being somehow supposedly healthy because of those reasons. Okay. Next up on the list is some protein bars. So I want to quantify, there are good ones and there are not so good ones. You can use the protein to energy ratio to determine whether it's actually a protein bar or something else. A candy bar masquerading as protein. So let's just say, for example, you want a protein bar that's going to give you about 20 grams of protein. If there is more than 20 grams of total energy from fat and carbohydrate that goes along with that protein, you don't have a protein bar, you have an energy bar, and that's a treat. And it is easy to overeat, and it's not going to help you with that feeling of fullness like I mentioned earlier. You should not have to consume more energy than protein in order to get enough protein. On the flip side of that, something like a Quest bar, for example. Now, I don't get any sponsorship money from Quest, but I probably should because I love Quest nutrition. My pantry is always full of it, and I usually eat some Quest bars, chips, or shakes, or some Quest product practically every single day, and I've been doing that for several years now, and I've got nothing but good results from that. So something like a Quest bar is very high in fiber. It only has about 4 grams net carbohydrates, and the total energy from fat is about 9 grams, I think, just off the top of my head. So that's roughly half of the amount of protein. So it's got double the amount of protein as energy. That's a much more favorable profile. And with something like that, you can add more, like do more than one bar. It's just going to improve the effects on satiety and body composition. So something to think about. Check your labels. If your protein source is from soy protein, that's inferior. So there are a number of things you can look for there, but some protein bars are a fake health food, and they're probably keeping you fat. Next up on the list is plant-based shakes specifically. So the entire category of plant-based is something that's very easily abused by the food manufacturing and marketing industry. It's kind of a trend at the moment, and the idea is, well, if it's plant-based, it must be healthy. The reality when it comes to a plant-based protein supplement or shake, the reality is the anti-nutrients are still there, and we typically have to consume higher amounts of carbohydrates to get an adequate amount of protein. Also, plant-based proteins in nature are not complete proteins. A complete protein has all 20 of the amino acids needed to synthesize muscle tissue. Any animal source protein has all of the amino acids in it. Anything like milk, eggs, or meat of any type is a complete protein. Plant proteins have to be combined in order to get all of the essential aminos, and that just leads to having to overconsume to meet our protein requirements. So for that reason, plant-based shakes make my list of fake health foods. Next up on the list is rice. So it's a question I get pretty often. Which is better, white rice or brown rice? And what I want to know is better at what? Again, going back to grains, rice is a grain, by the way, and oatmeal and oats are a grain also. I know some people are not, for some reason, they don't associate that oatmeal is a grain or that an oat is a grain. Rice is also a grain. If I had to choose between brown or white, I would say get the white rice because there's less anti-nutrients because the husk has been removed. That's also lower fiber content. But again, there's very little vitamin or mineral content in rice. There's virtually no protein. And at the end of the day, it's just a starch. So it's just a source of energy. Now, you may be hearing here a few foods that you have thought were typical bodybuilding type foods, like oatmeal and rice, for example. Those are not staples of the traditional bodybuilding approach, but they kind of gained popularity in the 1980s when everyone was on this low-fat kick, and that's what started the obesity epidemic in America. Bodybuilders or strength athletes who do eat lots and lots of rice and oatmeal, first of all, are very insulin sensitive, so they have no problem converting that into energy. Secondly, they have a ton of muscle mass, so they got plenty of storage space, and they're always exercising, so they're making more room in their storage space for more incoming glucose. And then third and finally, a lot of these people are probably taking insulin and other performance-enhancing drugs that are allowing them to metabolize super high amount of carbohydrate. If they're not already, eventually they probably will have to, because the human body is just not designed to process hundreds of grams of carbohydrates a day. I refer to what I do as a ketogenic or low carb approach, but honestly, it's only low in comparison to this artificially high carbohydrate diet that is forming the foundation of the standard American diet. So I call it a moderate amount of carbohydrate, or I can't even think of the word, but I'll come back to it. It's an appropriate amount of carbohydrate. Okay, so rice, I'll say this: if you're super lean and you're trying to do a lot of exercise, you probably do need some type of energy source, because if you don't have an energy source, you'll catabolize muscle tissue, which is not a good idea. But for the average listener, viewer here who has excess body fat they're trying to get rid of just to get into the healthy range, rice is not going to do you any favors. It's just going back to this dual fuel concept that your body is like a hybrid vehicle that can run on one of two different types of energy, either glucose or fat, sugar or fat. And my Fat Adaptive Strength Training program that I've got available right now at reshapehealthandfitness.com is designed to teach you how to burn fat as your primary fuel, lower your dependency on this exogenous glucose or carbohydrate, and finally tap into some stored body fat and get your metabolism functioning at peak intensity as it should. Next item on my list is juice or sport drinks. Juice is another one of those foods that's promoted as somehow being super healthy, but it's actually just a basic processed food. When we take a piece of fruit, like an orange for example, and we squeeze it and extract the juice, we've gotten all of the energy and we've concentrated that dietary energy without the fiber and without most of the vitamins that are found in the whole fruit. That is a problem because it gets into the cells faster, it elevates your blood sugar faster, and then you've got to either burn that through activity, which is also going to take the place of fat burning. Otherwise, it's going to end up getting stored as body fat. Sport drinks, same thing. A lot of those have added sugar. If you do want a sport drink or electrolyte mix, I recommend Element. DrinkLMNT.com is their web address. I'll link that below. Rob Wolf is one of the founders of that company. Great guy. Great source of information on the paleo diet, keto diet, nutrition in general. He's written a number of great books. I don't have any affiliation with him for marketing purposes, but I do recommend that product. Or if you're just shopping at your local grocery store, you can get Powerade Zero or Gatorade sugar-free version that has some electrolytes, sodium, potassium, calcium, etc., without the added sugar. Okay? All right, next up on the list is, while we're at it, we talked about juice, we're going to talk about fruit in general. Dr. Robert Atkins, creator of the Atkins diet, said, "I don't see how fruit got such a great reputation in the first place." It's funny to me that fruit and vegetables are lumped together in one category. Our recommendations will say eat X number of servings of fruit and vegetables. Fruit and vegetables are two different things. And when I say fruit is a fake health food, I'm talking about high sugar fruit. That tends to be your tropical fruit. Bananas, pineapples are good examples. Most fruit is grown, well, first of all, in a traditional diet, we wouldn't be able to consume fruit year-round because it's only available seasonally. And that is a signal for the body to store fat in preparation for the winter. Fruit is a food that's available in the late summer, early fall, and that there's something about that fructose that triggers the body to go into hibernation or fat storage mode. So if we're eating fruit year round, especially fruit that's flown in from every different part of the world, that's not part of our natural diet. That gets to be a problem. It does have some vitamin content, but very low protein, mostly just a source of energy, and mostly just something that could end up being a trigger food for some people. If you get that sweet taste or crunchy taste, like let's just say you chop up an apple, well, your apple's not complete without throwing a little peanut butter on it, right, for extra flavor. So in that respect, you end up consuming more energy than you would have otherwise. So fruit is something I would put in a category of a refeed food, and that's something that you would just want to do in the high carb phase of the diet on the weekends in a 4-hour window, once or twice on the weekends, just to kind of refill the tank and get ready to go for another week. Okay, finally, or I have two more here, okay, low carb or light, quote, light beer. All right, there are other things about beer and alcohol, but beer in particular that is problematic other than the carbohydrate content. Alcohol is also an energy source. So technically a fourth macronutrient. We have fat, protein, carbohydrate, and alcohol is an energy substrate. If we take alcohol into our body, that is a form of energy that we have to burn up or otherwise it gets stored. Also, alcohol is notorious for getting stored in the liver and contributing to fatty liver disease, which is on the rise. Also, beer in particular, although a lot of people really love beer, it has ingredients that are estrogenic. Hops, for example, which is also an herb, raises estrogen levels. So if men are consuming a lot of beer on a regular basis, higher estrogen means promoting fat storage. And some of the so-called feminizing effects, like gynecomastia or man boobs, for example. And you notice that guys that drink a lot of beer have that big beer belly. That's visceral fat that's forming around the organs, and that is not a good thing for overall health. So keep it in the window of a sometimes food, I would say. Just don't fool yourself into thinking a low carb, low calorie, or low light version of beer is going to do you any favors. All right, and finally on the list here we have plant milks. So milk in quotes, almonds, oats, etc. Okay, one time I did consume a lot of almond milk on a regular basis, and I did that because it was very low carbohydrate. So at the time I was trying to avoid sugar from milk, which is probably a good idea. There are ultra filtered milks now, so like cow's milk that is ultra filtered that has a very low sugar content. So when I mix up a shake now, that's what I use instead of the almond or oat milk. The reason almond milk and oat milk and other milks are problematic, they're a very highly processed food. They have very low protein content. Sometimes they have anti-nutrients and seed oils and other ingredients added, things that we're trying to avoid. And they're a supposed healthier alternative to milk, but milk is not especially harmful to our health in the first place. If you do have problems with milk sugar, you can go for an ultra-filtered milk, or you can use dairy products, or maybe the pasteurization is what's causing the problem. Pasteurization is done to keep the bacteria count down, but regular milk actually is supposed to contain bacteria and enzymes that help digest the milk sugar. So the pasteurization is what could be contributing to the inability to digest milk, or the lactose intolerance that some people seem to have. Or let's see, one more thing about almond milk while I'm thinking about it. Also a source of these chemicals that contribute to kidney stone formation. I'll have to think of the name of it in a minute. Oxalates. Oxalates are a category of anti-nutrients that can contribute to kidney stones, gallstones, and at the end of the day, almond milk and oat milk are not really super beneficial in terms of health or nutrients, and milk is not really problematic in terms of nutrients. Raw dairy is on the rise. So if you can find a local farm that sells this pet milk, they have to label it as pet milk. Some states, raw dairy or raw milk is illegal. I have drank raw milk. I actually put raw eggs in the raw milk. Neither are pasteurized. Blended it up and drank that, and I was perfectly fine. So that's the list for today. Those are your fake health foods that are keeping you fat. Click the like button, subscribe, follow me everywhere and anywhere. And if you like these videos, I'll be back with more tomorrow. Let me know in the comments below if you have a question or a suggestion for a future episode. I'd be happy to talk about that. We're doing our 90-day summer weight loss challenge right now. You can sign up for that on the website and get in your best overall condition in the next 3 to 4 months. Get in peak shape for summer. Who doesn't want to do that? I'll be back later. Thanks for listening.